do a pledge of allegiance? Yes, let's do a pledge of allegiance. Let's start with we're starting with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, welcome everybody. Glad you are all here in person and online. I would like to start off by saying that this meeting is being held to inform the City of Tonasket of the status of the Perfect Passage project. The City of Tonasket has aging infrastructure in its downtown US 97 transportation corridor, including highway pavement, sidewalks, water, sewer, and storm drain systems. The proposed Perfect Passage project is to renovate the downtown area, replacing existing infrastructure and increasing curb appeal for increased economic development and usability. Couple notes I would like to make. If you have a statement or comment when it comes to that time of this meeting, please use the microphone so everybody can hear, because the people online won't hear you unless you use the microphone. And the other item is that Kurt Dennison will not be in attendance. So the information that Kurt was going to be sharing, the history of the Perfect Passage project and finalized master plan explanation, will be split up, I think, between Tegan and Kurt Holland. So there you go. It's all yours, Mayor.
Just for the folks online that are listening, if you have a question, please use a little hand symbol so that we know that you have a question, so that you can participate in the discussion. Okay, so first, thank you everyone for coming to this important, what I consider a very important milestone of this project. It's a project that has been, and you'll learn for how long it's been in the process, and we wanted to share with everyone before we get as we continue where we're at this juncture. But before we get started, I would like us to go through a little exercise of some ground rules. Can you assist me with that, Alice? And so what the ground rules is all about is making sure that we hold ourselves to a civil meeting as best as possible. And so this is our opportunity as a group to decide what are going to be our ground rules. How are we going to communicate with each other so that we can have a civil conversation on a topic that can be at times quite spirited conversation. So are there any suggestions, anyone about how we want to the rules that we want to have for this conversation? For example, one rule could be to raise your hand to be called on. That's one suggestion. Anybody else?
Just keep it polite and civil. And we all know how to do that.
Polite and civil. Thank you. Common respect for everyone and their opinions. Whether we agree or not. Any other rule that you guys would want to hold ourselves accountable for before we get started? The only other suggestion I would have, let's keep it happy, a good conversation, a spirited conversation, spirited. With that, I will pass it to Mr. Kurt Dennison, our engineer, and I'm sorry, Kurt Holland. I do apologize. sir.
I've been called worse.
So that's my fault. There's the two Kurts and I also, it's Kurt 1 or Kurt 2. And I know there's, I'm getting better at the last names, but sorry, sir. I know that it's a huge mistake to miss. I'm just kidding, just kidding. Go ahead. I know. That's okay. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Looks like it's on, right? Okay. The downtown infrastructure process began about 20 years ago with a vision that the community hired to give some ideas of someday revitalizing the downtown corridor. Some of those elements were actually tied into the project that goes up the highway to the high school, the pedestrian lighting, et cetera. What really ended up spurring the project on was the downtown flooding issues that they were having. This was exacerbated by some of the infrastructure that Darren's going to talk about a little bit, as well as the lack of ADA conformance through the downtown corridor. We've been updating stormwater, ADA sidewalks outside the state right away, but there was a conflict with the state, the city, and jurisdiction, and then also the extraordinary cost of going in there and revitalizing the downtown corridor. So through that process, Tegan and the council and Jill and others, we started a pretty aggressive funding protocol to get the project where we are today. Tegan, you got?
Yeah, and about 4 years ago, when maybe even close to 4.5 years ago, when it kind of got re-energized, it was due to the flooding that had happened just the year and the year before that, and it going into the cooler and the yoga shop, and the water would go into the cooler and with just a few minutes of rain and end up going down their stairs and into their basement. And having businesses here in Tonasket that even complained about something like that and not doing anything about the infrastructure to help protect their businesses was just something that really needed to be addressed. And we needed to look at it. So I think within just roughly 4 years ago is when we started, I think that's when we first signed the initiation of a stormwater master plan and getting that started. And that's in turn become part, a very crucial factor of the perfect passage. And then Jill and I just 2 years ago borrowed a wheelchair to see just how bad it was in the downtown corridor for a person either in a walker or a wheelchair, and could they maneuver from one end of town to the other end of town by themselves. And it's impossible without going around cars and into the highway. And we actually did a video and put it on YouTube, and so people could see. And then we were asked to not really share it a whole lot. Because I'm like, no, we want the response. We want people to see what we're dealing with and why. And between the flooding and the ADA accessibility, and people they fall off the curb. They trip. Our sidewalks are not friendly when it comes to somebody in a walker or wheelchair or somebody that is disabled. And these are all different aspects of the perfect passage and what we've been working on putting together. So I could keep talking, but I'm going to stop.
Can I just interject one thing? One of the things that Kurt Dennison was going to talk about is what the master plan is and kind of what that means moving forward. Can we address that? I would like to not be the person that addresses that because I don't think I can do a good job. But what I could say, I'll start, is that we went through a long public process to create a master plan at the city level. What has gone through the council has been adopted, that will help us determine from today moving forward what the perfect passage looks like. So there's a lot of pieces that was discussed in our previous meetings that don't need to be discussed anymore because we have finalized the master plan. And that is available for anybody to see at City Hall. So
And also finalizing that master plan was what opened it up for us to get additional funding as well. So.
Any other history that, or anyone else would like to share? Anything else on the history? Nope. Okay, then now we'll move on to Mr. Johnson and Ms. Weddle to talk a little bit about Public Works and everything about what you guys are doing in regards to this project.
For the public works, we see a pretty big need to upgrade the water lines, the sewer lines. We've had problems with the side services. They're getting really old. They need upgraded too. In the downtown area, a lot of your side services, your main line's on one side of the road and the side service goes all the way across the road. So you'd have to shut down that whole road to fix it. So it's real important to get those fixed. As they mentioned, the stormwater is, it can't, half your town's on a hill. When it has a downpour, that water comes down and your storm grates can't take it. I mean, that's part of this project too, is upgrading that, which will be huge. That will keep the downtown businesses hopefully from flooding. Sidewalks are pretty obvious, they're not ADA accessible. There's a lot of settling, they're cracked, they're heaved in spots, there's trip hazards. They're needing replaced too, really bad.
Alyssa?
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I mean, Darren did a great job explaining, but one of the things that I run into in the community is businesses asking, how is the city going to support our businesses, and what is the role between the city and our businesses? And I think Alice did a really great job explaining one time to me that one of the great things that the city can do is to make sure we have current, up-to-date, reliable infrastructure that can go to housing and then also to businesses. And we can't do a lot more else with to support businesses, but what we can really do is make sure we have good infrastructure. And so this project, the infrastructure that I've been talking to Kurt and Darren about, and then also Kurt Janison, is that we basically have original pipes, original sidewalks. It just, there's only so long that you can put a Band-Aid on something before it breaks. And so that's what this project is trying to do, is to really repair and replace all the Band-Aids that have been put onto all of the connections and pipes. So.
Can I go backwards?
Go ahead.
When we talk about the history of the Perfect Passage and when it got re-energized a little over 4 years ago, I just want to add that we had a lot of meetings. We went and got some funding to help do some planning, and Varela and Associates came over, and we had meetings here in this council room where PUD showed up, the tribe came, Arnie Marchand brought some ideas and conversation. We've had WashDOT here. We've had different individuals that were going to be affected, could participate, better the scenario. So many people come and be a part of this discussion. And a lot of them says, hey, when you guys do it, keep us in the loop so that we can drop some stuff underground. Hey, we've been thinking about upgrading our stuff too. So they're all, when we call it the Perfect Passage, the reason we ended up, in fact, in those meetings, we settled on that name because the Magnificent Mile was taken by someone else. We figured that this was going to be amazing if we could get it all to work and all to work at the same time. Between funding and construction and all the different parties involved, it was going to be pretty amazing to make this all happen. And so far with the funding and it being able to, so what we've been able to get so far, one of the things we thought about was what's going to expire? How soon do we have to use it? We might have a plan, but maybe some of it we can't get on the year we need it. So we're going to have to go after something else. And getting all of that work together was definitely going to be pretty incredible. And so far, to my amazement, we've come a long ways and it's pretty amazing. So I just wanted to give that little bit of 2 cents that we've had a lot of meetings with a lot of people, and it will truly be the perfect passage if this thing gets done.
Well, that's a perfect segue, and thank you, Tegan, for that history, because it's important to know that this is a mammoth, right? And significant, what it was, a magnificent mile. I mean, it's going to be magnificent that we get it done, and it's going to be to all the work from everyone here, for the people that have come before in council, and townspeople that have been supportive and have really provided us crucial feedback that has gotten us to this stage. So with that, we'll have Kurt Holland, who represents the engineering firm of Varela and Associates, give us a description of the phases of the project, a funding analysis, and a description of construction possibilities. Kurt?
Okay. So you guys zooming in, can you see my screen?
Please give us a little hand or a thumbs up. Okay, there, I see a nod there. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So, kind of as indicated earlier, that most of the infrastructure outside of the sanitary sewer is original piping. So the storm system was actually a combined system. In the early 1900s, it was just a sewer pipe. It was storm and sanitary. In the 90s and 2000s, we separated the sewer out. The storm piping wasn't ever addressed. The perfect passage was divided into 3 phases for several reasons, primarily for funding bites, and as well as to ensure that the project could be completed during a construction season. And I know that's been, well, I understand it's been some discussion of concern with some of the community members. So in the lower portion of the slide right here, I don't know if they can see that. This is a previous project that we did in Republic, and it's 6 blocks long, very, very similar in scope. So it was a storefront to storefront gutting of a state highway, water lines. There was actually a sub drain system put in, storm lines, sidewalks, ADA ramps, and as well as a highway reconstruction. So it's about 50% bigger than phase 1, the projected phase 1, being from 4th Street down to First Street. We did add some elements to phase 1. You can see these island improvements out here. The intent there is we'll have a base bid package on phase 1 and then a couple schedules with some of these islands, prioritizing them. And one of the other reasons to do that is the current volatility of the market, the construction costs and things. We want to make sure that we have a project that can be awardable, and we can have pieces that we can cut out if there's not enough money, because it's extraordinarily volatile right now. Yes, sir.
Can you please use the mic, sir? The mic.
Now you know the rest of the story. Oh, okay. Over there. Okay, one of the main problems that I think is a very important aspect of all this is
Sir,
we
sir-
do need.
Sir, one second. Can you provide, can you give us your name so that we can?
Yes.
Okay. perfect.
My name is Philip Reed Halfhill. It's not like I don't know anything about city development. My grandfather was the founder and builder of San Clemente, California. So, and 29 Palms and Lake Forest Park. So it kind of runs in my blood. But what I'm trying to say is we're having a lot of speeders coming through here. A stop sign with a warning sign giving adequate space for like semi trucks, et cetera, to slow down and then to stop is definitely needed here before somebody gets killed. We're having speeders coming through here. I hear them every morning, gunning their engines, running down Whitcomb. And it's to the point where I think it's getting out of control. And if that could be tied into this, just a stop sign and just a warning sign beforehand, that would be an excellent idea. And it would ensure the safety of our citizens, tourists, everybody.
Can I answer that question?
Yes, sir.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. But as Whitcomb is a state highway,
Yes, sir.
that falls under the jurisdiction of Washington Department of Transportation.
Mhm.
And so far, they have not given us the go-ahead to even put up a four-way stop sign there on Fourth Street, Lee Franks, which I think we really need.
Really need.
We really need, but they won't sign off on it. So
No,
that's,
that's rather unfortunate. Is there any way to petition them or?
So first off, thank you for the question and thank you for the answer, Council Millen. For the sake of the meeting and continuing with the presentation, please write if you have something to write all your questions so we can get all those answered. But absolutely, we'll look into this because maybe they gave us a no before, but maybe we can look into this as we move forward.
We have talked about this in several meetings.
Okay.
I'll be more than happy to talk with you afterwards.
Perfect.
Yeah, not a
Perfect.
problem.
Please, sir.
Yeah, and in regards to that, there are elements of the project that are gonna, the terminology is called traffic calming.
Mhm.
So as you narrow portions of the road, there'll be active speed zone signs on both sides. There'll be some additional controlled crosswalks. So we are addressing it in some of the geometry of the road as well as signage. So though WashDOT is extraordinarily bullheaded when it comes to stopping traffic on state and sexually US highway, we have addressed it to the best of our ability as far as design concepts to slow traffic down. Okay. Yep. So that's in the works. Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep. Now construction. Downtown construction is difficult. And I can't tell you that it's not going to be difficult. During that project, right there that we did in Republic, again, it was storefront to storefront. All the businesses remained open every day. It wasn't perfect all the time. And when they're pouring cement right outside your door to your store, you got to let the cement harden. But when the sidewalks were removed, there were sidewalk ramps, gravel ramps to provide access into the businesses. They would use plywood ramps to get them over the curbs. You know, they will take every precaution possible to make sure it's limited. On-street parking will probably not be available during that time. They'll do one half the road, put the traffic on the other side of the road, but all the businesses, access, et cetera, will be open for the duration of the project. And I don't think we had, I can't say we didn't have any complaints, but it is difficult. I mean, it's just, when you gut your kitchen, it's really hard to cook sometimes. But means and methods will be implemented in the construction to ensure that it's minimized to the as best as possible. Anything else regarding construction,
can you-
disturbance?
Can you talk a little bit about the different phases in the funding? I don't know if you're going to be talking to that or not right now, but.
Sit through the whole thing. This is hard. Again, phase one is from the intersection of Fourth to First. Maybe you can minimize that.
And, okay.
to the intersection of First. Project will stop short of First. The reason why you want to include the entire intersection in the project and not just half of it is there's a requirement that if you fix an ADA ramp on one side of the street, you have to fix the one on the other side of the street. So you're not directing wheelchair traffic into traffic they can't get back out of the street. Like I indicated earlier, there are some island improvements, including the intersection of Highway 97 down south of town in this, is that the road to Bonaparte?
It's where the Tenasket sign is at.
Okay. In the far north end of town, and then this triangle.
That's purchase. Oh.
So let me go over there. Point
There you
to
go.
that. You guys are not able to see, or, oh no, you're able to see here. Sorry.
Yeah, right here.
Sorry.
Yep.
Okay, let's, at the end, we'll answer that. But let's keep it, let's make sure we don't forget. So I'll write some of it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, can they hear me now? Yeah, that question is more of a municipal decision, not a construction. Will there be construction noise? Absolutely. Yep.
Kurt, I have a question.
Yes.
You talked about improvement in the islands. What do you mean by quote improvements?
Well, some of the potential storm improvements would direct stormwater into grassy swales that may be incorporated in some of these empty areas. This isn't finalized. In fact, this intersection right here with
Fourth Street?
that's Sixth.
Oh,
Yeah, this one is going to have to go through WashDOT because they have jurisdiction between the curbs. So that's going to be an interesting solution. But right now, the pedestrians are just kind of directed out into the middle of that intersection without a real clean where to get out of
That's
it.
Highway 20 and 97.
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Yeah, and the trucks would have an interesting time going through the grass.
Yes, yes, they would.
Okay.
Phase 2, and I'm sorry that blue doesn't show up very good. Yes, sir. Yep. Yep, and the plows. Yep. Yes, sir. Right now, this is the only one that the state has been talking about us doing. And again, that's going to be a coordinated effort with WashDOT. Yep.
Okay, I'm noting that question, so he can finish.
And
So,
these are
How many
existing.
islands? Islands and how many islands? And then there are some questions over there that we're noting as well.
Phase 2 is going to start up on the south end of phase 1 and go down to 7th. And that will be very similar in nature to phase 1. Except on the south end, that one end of the sidewalk has already been completed. Phase 3, the north end of it will be similar to phase 1, and then a decreasing impact as you go north with primarily sidewalk and pavement improvements. The paving in of itself is a little bit of a side note, but interesting for maybe somebody like me, not everybody. But it's been overlaid so many times that the center of the street is 16 inches higher than the gutter line. And when we talk about the stormwater issues, what that ends up doing is when the pipes can't convey the storm, the center line of the road acts as a dam. And so it can't even sheet flow over the highway. And that's one of the reasons why it's been building up so much on the east side. So when we say pavement restoration, it's going to be pulling that hump back down out of that center of the highway, giving us the 6-inch curb reveals to handle the water when you do have flooding. And in the event there is a significant event, it also allows the water to shed over top of the highway. Any other questions regarding
So,
phasing?
so we did have another question, not regarding phasing, but going back to the Republic.
Yes, sir.
The question was, how long did that project take? And then if you could get just an estimate of how long ours would take. I mean, I don't know if you can, but just an average, if you will.
I'm gonna say the Republic one was 6 months, and I don't, that was 10 years ago or better. And I would say, I mean, our goal is to be in the construction season, safe construction season. I would say go out to bid March, bid opening, April, May, they get going. Asphalt plants don't open till April. They close by November, get it done by September, end of September. But 4 blocks is really doable by a prominent construction firm.
And again, just to be clear, this is just the first phase.
Yes.
And then when do you anticipate the second phase and the third phase?
Well, our goal is just to go for preceding years. So it'd be 23 for phase 1, 24 for phase 2, 25 for phase 3. That's going to be dependent on obviously funding and, crazy things like COVID and stuff like that happen and we don't have control over it. That's the current goal.
So is there a mitigation plan as far as deterring traffic maybe? From Ellis Ford, maybe down to Highway 7, down to Janice? Is there any kind of a plan in place looking at that,
No,
especially truck traffic?
nope, we have not discussed that and WashDOT hadn't seemed interested. And, the other thing too that we have to watch, when you start pushing a whole bunch of traffic on roads that aren't used to that traffic, then you end up having the unintended consequence of ruining the road. So we even talked about just pushing it over to Western, right? But then highly likely you'd end up having to redo Western when this was all done. So, but there's sometimes unintended consequence by shoving a bunch of truck traffic in particular on a road that's not
Right.
used to it.
So,
Can I add to that real quick?
Yes.
In previous meetings, we also discussed that if we were able to shut down one side and let traffic still go, then besides detouring, people could still see the businesses that were there. People would still see signage to be able to come around and park and go into places. And they wouldn't lose as much business. If you totally bypass the business corridor, then they're just going to keep on going.
Yeah, excellent point.
so this is a perfect, and I'm not saying that, if you have more questions for Kurt, you're going to have an opportunity to ask him all the questions. That's why we're all here. But now this is a perfect segue to Ms. Levine to talk about her expertise in going after funding for this project and what it's going to take, what she foresees for the coming 3 or 4 years that we may have to go out there again. So,
Want me to leave-
Tegan, please.
You want me to leave this slide up or?
Yeah, that'd
Put
be
it back.
great, so they
Okay.
can see it online. So we'll get past the sticker shock right up front. So the total of this project has been estimated at $9.5 million. And with that, there is no intention by anyone sitting up here or anyone else that wants that to be solely on the constituents of the city of Tenasket. This is a US state highway. It's, there has been, we have 20,000 people come through this road, sometimes on a daily basis during the summer. And so that's why, with the help of Varela, and they've really come up with a funding plan to reach out and try to fund this with as much grant money as we possibly can. And as you can see from the slide that's up there, there's a state appropriation. So that's a capital budget request that we went for last year or year before, I'm sorry. And so that's 1.6 million and some change. And then the Washington Department of Ecology, that would be that stormwater master plan aspect of the perfect passage. The STP, 400,000. DOT pavement preservation, if everyone notices, there's some pavement going on just north of town. There was a bunch south of town last year. They came up 2 years ago and talked to us, and they told us that they were going to be coming back through and putting in another layer. And we were like, please don't. We're working on a fix. Whatever you're going to spend in our town, please put it in the bucket. And so they said yes. And they ended up, so it says 600,000 here. If I'm correct, there's more to come from them. Yeah, so 400,000, because it was a total of $1 million. TIB Complete Streets, that was one of the pleasant results of getting that master plan complete and in and finished. And then we have a total for phase 1 to date of 4,066,000. So it's the grant, if you can take a look at that in the percentages, I don't have a calculator, so I'm not going to be able to do. But right now we sit at 95% in grant for phase 1. And I'm shocked every time I hear that. And we had to, every time I say that to somebody, they say, no way. And yeah, we're there. So it's pretty exciting. We've got some other funding that we're going to be going after. Next year, we will do another capital budget request. There's some a federal appropriations, one that has already been submitted. Is that the one to Newhouse?
Yes.
Yes. So sometimes we call them different things, so we don't actually know the, the correct term. And then we have a CDBG grant also that has been gone after. So with those, it would, we're looking pretty good to go out for bid and get some engineering and design done. When I say design, please don't think I'm thinking about the aesthetics of the project. More so what the piping is going to look like under the ground is what Varela and Associates and the engineers need to be working on and spending some money on right now. So with that, we're going to keep the funding strategy similar throughout, and we'll go out for more as it comes. Sometimes grants, we don't know about them. And then all of a sudden, Alice or somebody or Varela will just say, hey, this just came out. You guys qualify. You guys can go after this. Can we do it now? And so sometimes if you see something, if we're to meet again in 6 months, a year, and you say, hey, that wasn't on the first one. Well, it would have come up and we qualified, so we went after it. And so, and that will help fill in the gaps a little bit if there is any. So, and that's, Kurt, you have anything to add to that?
No. It's pretty stunning that, we've been this successful. Currently that, like Tegan indicated, we have the 1 million plus is a federal appropriation. We applied for that a couple months ago. We're currently working on a CDBG grant, general purpose grant for $1 million. And then the 3 white ones, that's a USDA Art Rural Development Grant Loan Program, Ecology Grant Loan Program, and then there's also an EPA Public Works. So those are going to be kind of gap funders that, particularly the RD, that we can, if we end up being $100,000 short or $200,000 short, we can go after a grant loan package with rural development.
Somebody's there waiting. Can, yeah. Sorry, yeah, we need to make sure the folks online can hear us.
From what I can see, this financial planning is very fiscal, very sound. It makes perfect sense. The funds are there, they are available. This can be done very easily over a period of time. Just like it was done in Republic, it shall be done here. I'm totally in favor of it, and I sign off on it.
Thank you, sir. So we'll now can transition to our city clerk, so she can provide you with, well, one second. Yes.
Sorry, I just want to go backwards just 1 second. Can we define plan versus design? And what the difference between those two was? There's a lot of people that I've talked to in the community that those two are interchangeable, but in this project they are not. And so can we clear that up? Kurt, can you clear that up?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't look at me in that.
I know.
Go to the expert, so.
Yeah, the plan, that is the physical attributes that you're going to see are largely been determined. You know, there'll be some ancillary things like what's the on-center spacing of the poles, things like that, signage. The design is taking the stormwater plan and applying it to pipe sizes. There's going to be also a stormwater treatment element to the project, and that is to help. Right now, your stormwater goes to the Okanagan River. So there's a treatment portion to the stormwater project. It'll be sizing and determining that. It'll be going over things with Darren and making sure that, well, the roads all tore up, that we do get any of the old water lines taken care of, the side laterals taken care of, look at the side sewers, et cetera, et cetera. So design, the engineering design is the pipe size, slopes. What's the configuration of the ADA ramps? You know, those elements, but the physical attributes that you're going to be looking at have been largely determined and adopted by council.
Thanks, Kurt.
Got it?
Yeah, got it.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you. And now we'll transition to Alice, as I was saying, so she can talk to a little bit about the impact this project is going to have on our budget and all those tough decisions that the council are gonna have to make as we move forward up to now. So go ahead. Alice.
Okay, so in the first phase, the $202,800,000 that is the portion of the Washington State Department of Ecology, that will be a loan, and that will be paid back through the Stormwater Fund, which the city has had for several years. And we have used that fund to fund different, the stormwater plan, et cetera. And right now, the current rates are $1.50 per residence and $3 per business. So basically, the Stormwater Fund brings in about a little over $14,000 annually, and our debt service for the 202.8 will be $11,370 per year and some cents. And so those costs right now will be covered with our stormwater utility fund. One of the things also that we have to consider will be the maintenance costs for the new stormwater system. Formerly, we would take those maintenance costs out of the street fund because we had no way of knowing and determining what was actually stormwater versus street. So now we will have a more inline idea of what those costs will be. So projected costs annually will be just a little over $2,800. Some of those costs will not even have to be utilized except for every 2 years. It just depends on the amount of silt, et cetera, that is collecting in the system. So right now we are sitting pretty good. And I'm not saying that over the years that we couldn't realize a small increase in those rates, because rates do go up and because it depends on our economy. We all have to face those types of costs. So that's basically in the first phase, what our impact will be. As to going forward into the other 2 phases, we hope to get funding to cover costs for the water system, and particularly, we may not for the sewer system, because to go after certain money, you have to have higher sewer rates. If I'm explaining this correctly, Kurt, am I? You have to have higher sewer rates to qualify for certain funding. And right now, we don't charge enough to be in that category. So time will tell how we get additional funding, but it will be, hopefully, we will be able to cover those costs with grants, but we don't know yet.
Yep. And if you look at the funding strategy, one of the things we try to do is chase and cover those elements that didn't have a utility fee up front. So you don't have a fund to replace ADA ramps. You have no ability to pay for a loan on ADA ramps or sidewalks or pavement preservation. You have a little bit in the storm. So, our primary concentration was to try to get funding, as much funding, grant funding for those elements as we possibly could. And now we're taking a step back and looking at the water and the sanitary sewer. The water elements are largely covered, and one of the reasons they're covered is because your water rates are higher than your sewer rates. There's kind of some rules of thumb with the state and the federal funders on where your rates, quote unquote, need to be before they give you money. They want you to have a little skin in the game. And, that old adage of keeping your rates at $10 and expecting people to pay, the government to pay for everything, it doesn't fly anymore. So there was a strategy even in how we went after the funding, which elements we tried covering first. And so far it's worked out pretty well. The sanitary sewer one you'll see is white all the way down. It is also the smallest one. The anticipated cost for the remaining old pipe is $156,000. So that wasn't a big chunk to go after. We were going more. The water is closer to $500,000, so that raised it in precedence over the sanitary sewer. And I think it's also important to add, Darren touched on their efforts out in the field. So when you start talking about costs to the city, you need to look at the global costs. He's out there fixing that water line when it's 20 below zero, and there's a cost to the city when he does that. And when you're going to go back and make all this infrastructure new, he's not going to be out there, hopefully, digging up water lines when it's 20 below. When you have a flood and he's out there, we got pictures of their hands and knees trying to dig debris out of the catch basins to get it flow. Those costs go away as well. When you talk about ADA ramps and you can go around in the wheelchair and demonstrate it, but the fact of the matter is there's a significant liability to the city out there. If something did happen, that's a big cost, right? So, when we start talking about O&M costs and costs to the city, I look at those and I cringe because I've been in the middle of some issues, liability issues with this city, and being proactive and going after these it's important, but
Can I add to that?
absolutely.
Also, when it comes down to the total, one of the things, there's all these separate line items of where the money came from. And each one of those entities tells us how we get to spend it. So when you see at the bottom, oh, the city gets $4 million. No, the project gets $4 million. And every single one of these entities is telling us how we are going to spend it. So if it was for sidewalks, it gets spent on sidewalks. If it was for stormwater, it gets spent on stormwater. So I just want to, when some people are talking about funding and, oh, the city just paid $4 million, but they can't do this. Well, this money is designated for a special purpose, and we have to use it as it was given to us. So.
And if we don't use it for that purpose, that becomes misappropriation of funds and we can get ourselves in big trouble.
So I just want to thank everyone. Now can we move to the question and answer phase? Can we put the chat up, the chat? I know there were some questions on there. I think we got most of them, but that last one right there, let's see, the first one. Could you please ask Kurt to, oh, well, let's go to the next one. He corrected that.
Can I just say one thing about that real quick? So Rose, we are working on that at a council level, so we can update you. Tegan or I can let you know what's going on with Jake breaks, at least at the council level.
And Rose, I think I've talked with you before on this, on that side of the highway. It is a county issue. And so the conversations are, they can be had with the county, but if it really is up to them. I'm sorry. And I know in the middle of the night, I can hear it echo to my house on the other side of town.
For all practical purposes, yes. It also includes the lighting, the pedestrian lighting coming down both sides of the street. Potentially some signage. The active speed zone sign is included in that. Anything else?
When you say aesthetics, if you're talking about
Street
art,
trees? Oh, I don't know of any art.
art's been a big conversation within the city. So on grates, we saw some amazing grates in Spokane and in Wenatchee that had designs on them, and different things like that we had to buy, or they had to buy anyways. They turned it into a theme throughout the town, so or throughout that street. So there's been a discussion on trees and limiting them. And
whoever asked that question, whoever typed that question, if you guys could provide us a little bit more clarification as to what you mean by aesthetics. If you're willing to do that.
I asked that, and the answer that Kurt gave is informative, and I don't know who was talking from the council desk about the what you saw in Spokane, but that also sounded really interesting, the grates and other things that people were creative with. I was just looking at that budget sheet, and at the top, on the top of the budget sheet, it said all those various categories for things that the money could be spent on, and aesthetics was one, and bike racks was mentioned, and so I was just curious what other items were in that category.
Yep. And the complete streets funding and what was the other one? STP. They have specific aesthetic elements. In fact, complete streets can only be used on aesthetics. Yep.
But that's not finalized yet, correct? So all
No,
those
just that-
pieces.
Right.
Yeah,
Just the money
so-
has to be spent.
Right, so from my understanding, we were gonna, at the final stages, that was like Public Works and the engineers and the council kind of determining what those things look like. But that's not determined yet.
That was Council Weddle giving that response. Any other questions from folks online before we move to folks here in person? As we get to pick on them in person here. Oh. Okay, folks here here in council, any questions? Any points of clarification? Phil, go ahead. But yeah, you're gonna have to use the microphone.
You can sit down, but you can just pass it around if you guys want to.
We're becoming experts with that microphone by the time the night is over.
So I have several questions that kind of date back to what was planned a couple of years ago. One of the questions is harvest season impact, since we have a lot of trucks going through town. And if you're, doing construction in September and October, how are you going to deal with those
They
type
can't
of?
hear you. It needs to be right there.
How are you going to deal with those impacts?
Yep. That's a great question. We had some harvest situations in Ritzville. There's this grain harvest. That particular situation is fairly short duration, and we actually did just shut the project down for a couple of weeks and open it up to harvest. So I think that is maybe a discussion point with council. We'll have to discuss further.
We did discuss at one point if we could, depending on how it went out for bid, starting as early as we possibly could. So it was just at the tail end when harvest started.
Would there be a possibility of maybe starting at 4th Street and working towards First, since a lot of the harvest impact is on 4th Street?
Yes. Yep. Great point. So get that intersection done. Yep. Yes, sir.
Some questions about the islands, since most of the islands that we have in our plan in phase 1 have a problem with getting larger trucks around them. Is that planned into yours? Because from the design we have here, we can't tell that.
Yes, we use a design template for the trucks, and it's usually, in this case, what is it called, a WB60, but it's the standard WashDOT requirement for designing intersections. Yeah, I know 4th, that's an awfully tight corner there as well.
Yeah, some of the trucks come down and they use all of 4th Street plus all of the highway to get around
Yeah.
4th Street presently.
Pole's been rubbed off a couple times, yep.
And then at Highway 20 on the, I guess, south side of that intersection, trucks run into that regularly also.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Because getting around that corner is,
WashDOT did buy a sliver of that private property and try to improve that a few years ago.
Hmm.
Yep.
So in layman's terms, when you say you're gonna be following the regulations,
Yeah,
does that ensure that a truck, when the plan, does that ensure that the truck will be able to
I
get
think-
through currently?
yeah, I think the key word is be able to. I'm not driving the truck and you're not driving the truck. So there's some awful truck drivers out there.
Trust me, you don't want me driving a truck.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We did an intersection in Ritzville last year. It had a 8-foot turning radius. We made it a 28-foot turning radius, and a truck drove over the back of the sidewalk and broke it within 2 days. So when we model it as if there's a competent driver driving the truck, but that's not always the case.
Well, yeah, but
We
so
do the best we can.
we depend heavily on trucking in
Yes,
this
sir.
area. And so I want the folks here to understand that those type of challenges for our community are an important part of this discussion, and that we are taking we're taking everything into consideration and doing our best within this project to ensure that if you're not drunk, or if you're not, if you have your license, most likely you're going to be able to make it through that.
Yeah, I met with
turn.
PUD today about moving their poles back on 5th and 4th. So they'll be moved.
What are the plans for sidewalks? Since I haven't been involved for the last 2 years, but 2 years ago, we were talking about narrowing the sidewalks up or taking out the green strips between the sidewalk and the highway. Is that still planned?
Define green strips.
Then some places the sidewalk is set back and there's a little piece of lawn between the sidewalk, particularly near the hospital.
Yeah. I'm not sure about that. I think there's been an element of concern about increasing parking down there. And there's been discussions about making modifications so they can park more vehicles in the hospital area. But I don't think they took that green strip out, did they, Tegan? I don't remember now.
No, it's still there.
Okay.
Yeah, that was not,
I don't
no, it
think so.
wasn't.
Then 2 years ago, that they were talking about that and narrowing some of the sidewalks to 5 or 6 feet instead of the present 10 feet.
Yep.
Is that still planned?
That was a conversation that was had.
Yep. A lot of those initial discussions, it's kind of like just throwing Jello against the ceiling and see what sticks. They toured a bunch of communities. They looked at, some successful projects. Some of them had planters, some of them had diagonal parking, some of them had, various improvements. And we just kind of talked about all of them and until it coagulated into the master plan that they adopted.
So the present master plan doesn't have diagonal parking in it?
Mm-mm,
No.
Okay,
no.
then nobody's discussed it and you can't tell from these drawings.
There is a fairly new handout that doesn't have that in it.
But those are really good questions, Phil.
Yeah, we'll get some more of those handouts. She had do you still have some of the handouts here at City Hall, Alice? Yes.
So it seems like from my understanding is that what we'd be doing is just taking up what we have currently, putting down everything new.
Yep.
It doesn't really change. It's just looks nice and works properly.
And everything underground gets fixed.
And it doesn't flood.
And, yeah.
And good evening, Jill Ritter, former council member and now just here as a community member. This was a project that I was partnered with Tegan on, so I'm very passionate about it and still am from a community member standpoint. And I would say that, when you talk about the aesthetics, go back to that a little bit. When we have this stuff dug up, this is a perfect opportunity to, when we put everything back down, that we, make some of those aesthetic improvements that really don't cost much if you look at the overall cost of this project. But, there was rumors throughout the planning of this project that this was purely an aesthetic project, and that's not the case. So I wanted to reiterate that. And again, I have more comments than questions, so sorry. Recently, we talked about Tegan and I doing the experiment with a wheelchair from one end of town to the other and the hazards that presented. But when we talk about handicaps, I'd like to say that I don't think you really have to be handicapped to be exposed to the hazards on our sidewalks. You know, my daughter just recently had a baby, but when she was 8 months pregnant, she got out of her car in front of Wild Rose and she tripped over the heaves in our sidewalks. So, you know, this applies to everybody. I think if you're not really paying attention to where your feet are, or you can't see them because you're 8 months pregnant, you might have trouble and trip over our sidewalks as they are right now. So again, this project is important for many reasons, but that's another one of them, is that you can be just a basic community member walking down our sidewalks and be presented with hazards. So I wouldn't just comment that this is about fixing it for the handicapped people of this community. It's for everybody. Absolutely. Yeah. So this can apply to everybody. And so our sidewalks are in really bad shape and we need new sidewalks. So again, I encourage everyone to support the project.
It's on.
Okay.
It's turned on.
Okay. My name is Joanne Dagnan. The only,
Closer, Joanne.
okay, the only
Hey,
concern
One second, can you guys hear her clearly right now when she's talking, Joanne? Okay, go ahead, Joanne, you can.
everybody says my voice carries.
Oh, it carries fine.
It's gone.
Yes.
Yes. Well, they can hear it right now. They're saying that they can hear her.
Okay. My only concern is just, as you know, we're going through a place where it looks like we may be in a recession, and I want to address the fact that I am concerned about the businesses and the impact that this is going to have on Main Street. We need to be very cognizant and try to figure out how we can get their customers in there and make it right. And we need this town. There's not a one of us that doesn't want this and to keep this community. And if we don't, then we should move on. The other thing that this is just my little personal observation. When people use Jake breaks, I'm always glad to hear them. That means that they're not going to come running through somebody's front door or back or run into somebody. And they're in business. They're paying business taxes. They're using our town. I think that's what you do when you live in a community. A Jake break is a safety thing, and I know there's regulations, but bear with them. They're trying to do as well as they can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't hit me.
And to your point about the businesses, please note that this council takes it very seriously. And we depend on those businesses. And our customers and our citizens, our constituents depend on the services they provide to us. And so we've been taking through this whole process. We've been looking at all the ways that we can to mitigate that. And we are in conversations with folks from Chamber of Commerce. We invite the business community to come and participate in these town halls and to give us ideas. And if you guys have ideas of how we can mitigate this for our businesses, please let us know, because we're trying. I've talked, if you could ask every person here, it is a priority that we make this as short and as painless as possible. But as Kurt said, it is going to be a burden on our businesses. But the light at the end of the tunnel when we're done is that, according to Kurt and according to other folks that have visited other projects like in Spokane and Republic, the comments that they're getting from those businesses is that they stop a lot more than before because of the curb appeal. Everything's new and shiny. And what are they selling? They must be doing something good, I think, right? The shiny effect. I want to stop like a fish. You throw a little shiny and they you catch them. So that's what we're trying to do. And more importantly, that infrastructure underneath, that water for our kids, that sewer water that doesn't go into our rivers, right? We want to make sure that we get that taken care of. And because we need Tonasket for the future. We don't want to go away. We want to stay here and we want to raise our families here, and we want the best Tonasket that we can have for our community. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Okay, just two things I was gonna, one thing is, the reason they use Jake brakes around here is we have hills coming into town. You know, if it's a town in a flat area, you don't need a Jake brake because you don't have 110,000 pounds pushing you down the hill. I mean, you get in a truck and you get that much weight behind you, you know you need a Jake brake. And then the other thing is, I was just wondering, has the construction cost been updated lately?
I updated them 2 weeks ago based on bids that we've gotten this spring and WashDOT unit analysis. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It added 15%,
Just 15?
just 15.
Just in case.
Wow.
Jeff, remember we went to Sprague Avenue?
Mhm.
Want to share your experience talking to the big bearded guy in the antique store? How did business improve?
Well, he said it increased. Yeah, he said it was rough for a while, but it increased. But getting back to this, this funding data from 3 years ago, you added 15%. I'm just gonna throw this out there. I think that's a very low ball number. Ductile iron has increased, PVC pipes increased, transite pipes increased. Fuel is increased. That means asphalt's gonna increase. Cost of labor, I didn't realize it now, but on a prevailing wage job, a laborer gets $40 an hour.
Yeah.
So
I want that job. How do you get that job?
Yeah. There, I also put inflation increment in there.
yeah.
So that was above that.
So you think that 15% increase will cover this?
Well, we have to balance it with when you go to the funders. I can't be ridiculous and on the contingency. So they'll pull me back a little bit if I start showing it. But
And the other,
that's the industry standard right now.
What I don't want to see is a city get stuck there with a big bill at the end of this thing. They have to make up the difference.
No, we won't do that.
Okay.
And the other element that I will introduce just for everybody here, that they did put in buffers. So those little islands, there's monies that are set aside for that, that if when we get to construction, if for whatever reason our calculations were way off, but I hope we're not, but you know how construction can be, yeah, you just like me a minute ago. It's okay. Things happen. So those are the safety valves, if you will, that Mr. De Varellas have put into this project to help us make sure that we have a way, we have flexibility
right now
to move forward.
Yeah.
I think that's what you
Yes, sir.
mentioned,
So
correct?
the bids will be assembled such that
long
there'll
as
be
it lasts, it
schedules.
may
We'll have
last
a
another
base bid so we can
15
get things done, and we'll have schedule A, B, and C, and we can award it based on what the bids are.
The city hall.
So you won't get stuck with the bill. at the
Okay.
end.
So where are you with?
And plus, McMillan has a lot of money.
Yeah.
He can,
Where are you with the design work?
Okay.
Design work at this phase?
We're not
Got something for you.
released to do
Fine.
design work until they get the cultural and environmental clearances complete.
Okay.
yeah, we're still working on that.
Sorry about that.
Welcome back.
These gadgets,
Any more questions? I know somebody else had more questions.
comment?
Yes, comments.
Uh,
Comments.
I wanted to tell you, I have worked as a long haul truck driver, coast to coast, with a 53-foot trailer and driving a Freightliner tractor and a Thermo King trailer and the whole bit, coast to coast, they did it. And you need those Jake brakes when those, for these hills to make it safer. I'm sorry if it's an inconvenience for some people, but we got to kind of give those guys some slack because otherwise it's going to be unsafe.
We had a case of a few years ago where a truck came down Highway 20, clear across the road, went clear across the railroad tracks and hit the side of a apple warehouse.
Yeah. And a fully loaded semi truck is 80,000 pounds. okay? That's what you're dealing with. Yeah, it's, well, how many football fields to stop once you hit the brakes? I was trained. I mean, wow, it's,
You gotta be thinking ahead.
you gotta really be thinking to drive a truck like that. So we have to give those guys some slack. When the harvest comes, we gotta make sure that they can use those Jake brakes. Maybe an inconvenience, but it will definitely ensure the safety of the citizens.
Thank you, sir. Tegan?
I just want to go back to your original question in regards to the crosswalks. We had a couple meetings where this was on the forefront of people's conversations because we were talking about bulbs out, no bulb outs, zero clearance, if that was safe, how that would work. Trucks are going to go over them anyways. What if somebody's standing there? How are we going to do this? And one of the things that kind of held true through the entire conversations was signage, lighting, and making those crossings as bright as possible. And so just even on the street, having the stripes, and keeping up on those, anything visual to slow them down and to make it, hey, yeah, there's crossing coming up, without hindering truck traffic, without, so there's a lot of accommodations that were taken into, lots of discussions that were had that made us really think about those crossings. So, because they are very important and we have a lot of people, and whether they're disabled or not, same again, it takes them a little bit longer to get across the sidewalks or the crosswalks. And some kids can run across and some people it takes them a while, so.
Thank you, Tegan. I do have one more question. And this may be for us as well, and maybe Alyssa, since you've been working with the businesses, maybe you can answer this, but the question is, how will the city work with individual businesses to work with, the faces? Maybe what's the communication? How is the city going to communicate? Maybe the timing of the faces so that there's communication. And I know there's been some work on this. So I'm sorry, Alyssa, maybe you want to talk as to the communication that has already started with the different businesses. I know you've been doing a lot of that, so.
Yeah, sure. So T and I have talked about wanting to set up a communication system between the city and the community to make sure everybody's informed. So we've talked about lots of different things that we want to implement. One, we want to have another meeting probably in another 3 months. So just to continue the conversation. So that's one start. From what I've talked to businesses in our community, people really want to be notified, especially with construction, ahead of time. And that's something that we've talked about of either having a robo system where you can send out text messages or emails when we have an update to give. Those are not all ironed out yet, but we do really prioritize communicating to our public. So we still need to finalize what we want to do for communication, but we have emails. We want questions. We want involvement. I mean, this is a good representation. I spent probably 3 full days talking to people, trying to get people here. And and I'm really, really happy about our turnout, but I'm really surprised we don't have more people. So it's going to take a lot of communication to get the word out. This is going to be on our website, this meeting, so people can view that and then hopefully get more involved and get more communication. So Tegan and I and the council need to finalize what communication is going to look like, but it is a priority for us. And we want to make sure we do the best job we can to get the word out.
Can I add to that? We also talked about doing a Facebook page, doing another, just having a perfect passage on our city webpage so people could click there and see what was happening there. Those are not all ironed out. These are all discussions that are and ideas. If people have other ideas that or something that have worked in another city that they loved. I know last year when the construction was happening, when the road was when it was a 20-minute delay, people were on Facebook. It's 20-minute delay and it stopped here, go around. And there was a lot of good conversation like that. So like you were talking about starting on 4th and then moving, you know, different ways. Okay, they're at this block now, or they're at here now, so you can go this way. This business, this was, you can get to these 3. You can't, you got to go around to get to these ones. And all of that is just really important, and we have been thinking about it. So if anybody has any other ideas, please contribute.
Okay, going into Oroville, there is a electronic sign that gives you the wait time at the border.
Mhm.
So maybe we could think about doing something like that at, down by the intersection of Highway 7. Say, you know, expect delays of 20 minutes, and then that would give those people the option of detouring around and going down Highway 7 and avoiding it. Just a thought.
We can discuss that. I mean, currently, I don't anticipate any delays at virtually any time during construction. I mean,
Okay.
there may be, hey, we have to back the truck up into the lane to turn it around or things like that. But Clark Avenue, that project was open. It's Highway 20, and it was open the full length of the project. The other thing too, and this is probably more aimed at the council and staff, we really try to make the contractor the responsible party for keeping the businesses happy. And that includes, you know, we can require them to have business meeting with the business owners on a weekly basis. And that's what we did there. Hey, sometimes, you know, I'm trying to think of, make sure I don't see anybody's name in here. Grandma Teresa has to get her medication 5 o'clock on Thursday. We really need access into there because she's in a wheelchair. And the contractor has to be responsible for making sure that that business has that access at that point in time. We can even pour the concrete around that time, you know? So, yeah, for council's purposes, we really try to push as much of that responsibility on the contractor to make sure that the business owners are getting taken care of. I would rather them call him at 2 a.m. complaining about it than myself or you, because ultimately it's his responsibility to keep them satisfied.
Yeah, but you know darn good and well who they're gonna call. They're gonna call
Yeah.
us.
They're gonna call him, and that's okay. He likes it.
We'll just put Jeff on the goal.
Okay, well, one of the big problems we had when they repaved Tenasket Avenue is a lot of those people were not able to get out of their driveway. They weren't, you know, mail service was interrupted, garbage service was interrupted. That was one of the things we really fell down on as far as planning. So,
and the Facebook page, we've had some successes with that, but you can also upload the contractor's weekly schedule, what he's doing, where he'll be at. And in a lot of the cases, it's address by address. I'm pouring the concrete in front of this address on this day, this address on this day, just to give folks a heads up. They also need to schedule their deliveries, because if you're pouring concrete in front of that door and you're having the semi unload, that's not going to work out very good. So a lot of language, a lot of effort goes into the contract to make sure that they're being held responsible for those activities.
Perfect. And I think we have a comment also on there. Maybe if you can read some suggestions. I think there was a comment on the chat. Yeah, click there we go. Can we read that?
Ideas to help with communication and help business owners in town. A newsletter that goes out at least the beginning of each phase to city addresses that has an overview of the plan, explains the time frame, has a list of contacts for information, contacts for resources to help businesses, etc. This newsletter could also be a standalone website or posted on Facebook.
Perfect suggestion. Thank you. Thank you for those. That's what we need. Though, we need ideas.
Include them in your utility bills.
And
too.
yes,
And one of the things that we weren't, the county, I don't know if they were really utilizing this 4+ years ago when this all started and we were talking about communication. But involving Maurice with emergency management, he already has the system. If you've signed up with the emergency management, you're already getting a text. So if something does happen or the plan changes, whoever the official is at the time can just reach out and say, hey, I just need to let you know this road shut down. And he'll blast the whole area and he can do it geographically. So if it's just the town or the whole county, he can do it to whatever geographic configuration we need him to send that notice out in to.
Yes.
radio announcements. Perfect.
Right, yes.
Oldies but goodies. Oldies but goodies. Patty has a question.
Okay, so Kurt, can you explain what the ADA ramps will look like? I think we've talked about this before, and one is a little more expendy than the other. And I've spoken with several low vision people who have a concern about how that's going to turn out. So if you could just explain, because there's a different angle.
Oh,
Does that make
okay.
sense? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Not being shared or. Okay, he'll do it in a minute. Yeah.
Or is that something that the city will decide, the council?
It'll be both.
Okay.
So these are called combination ADA ramps. So there's a single ADA ramp that points in both directions. The other method is you place the ADA ramps behind the circle back here and back here. So there's an ADA ramp there and an ADA ramp there. Now there's pros and cons to each one of those as far as pedestrian usability as well as the vehicular pedestrian conflict, particularly on busy highways. When you put your ADA ramp back here, the stop bar ends up being so far back of the intersection, they can't see oncoming traffic. So in this case, we tend to push those back further out into the intersection. So the stop bar is there and they have a better chance of seeing, okay? And then also puts the pedestrian out where if there's cars parked here, they can't see past the car. Understand what I'm saying? So we try to push the pedestrian out as far or as close to the intersection as we can. A, so they can be seen by the car, so they can see that there's somebody standing there. B, so they can see the cars coming. And then C, it pulls that stop bar closer to the intersection. So if you're parked there, you can see. In other situations, we may go.
Now, what was the street that you were just at?
That was 4th.
That's
Oh,
Yeah.
Just
no, I'm on 4th.
technology, you must love it.
But some of these down there, they didn't have the combination ones. They would. So I don't
Okay,
know
so
which one she was talking about it being
It wasn't
difficult.
specific to, it wasn't specific to Tenasket or any of the drawings. It was someone who was blind or is blind, sorry. And their comment was, is that the way I'm seeing it is that it directs you into the middle of the street,
Yeah,
into the middle of the highway rather than across the street.
yes, yes.
So that was the concern that was addressed. So just, but I believe when we spoke about it before, that this is a little less spendy
It is less expensive as well.
than, okay, but this is what's being recommended because of what you explained about the setback.
Mhm.
Okay.
So what you're saying is it takes into consideration folks that can't see, who are blind. And so,
Yeah, the ADA ramps have the waffle approach. So if you're blind and you have your cane, you can hear when you get to a
Okay.
quick street crossing. But you are correct. It does leave you out near the intersection and it may not be quite as intuitive. Yeah. But those are two different philosophies of crossing them. Going across this way, it would be, this would be an appropriate place to have two of them if it wasn't for the traffic here and trying to get somebody across right there because your car's parked so far back. Particularly when you're downtown and houses are built right to the lot lines. In downtown areas where your houses are further back and you can see around the corner, but when you're sitting there and that building's built right to the property line, you have no view of oncoming traffic when you're sitting in your car.
Well, and the other thing is that when there are cars parked on the highway, it's difficult then to even see. You have to approach driving
Mhm.
pretty far out in order to get, I mean, you're in the crosswalk area in order to see sometimes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
do we have any other questions from the audience? George?
You don't realize how many trucks use Third Avenue there.
Oh, yeah.
That's the core of downtown businesses. Food stores, Eagle, well, all the stuff trucks come deliver. They have a hard time getting around that corner the way it is now. We put the bulb out there.
Noted. Noted, and George, what we'll do is, again,
Just, since we've been talking about it, I've been looking more. And you notice, you try to get a 50-foot trailer and all the trucks, semis are conventional now, they're all stuff moves.
yeah.
Like they used to. Well, you see on Fourth Street all the time. They have to swing out the other way. They do the same thing on Third Street.
I'll be honest with you.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So Kurt, so those are so this is what we need. We need that feedback so that the engineers can look at all those things, all that feedback, take all the feedback and provide us with some mitigation strategies, the best that we can as we move forward. As somebody said, sometimes even the best mitigated solutions, depending on the driver, are not good enough. But I hope just to close today, given that we don't have any more questions, just to close. Oh, we have 3 more questions? Oh, go ahead, please. No, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
There's 2 at the bottom and then 1 more that was submitted today. The 2 that are on the agenda, I think we've answered, like where and how is the project 90% funded as per city council? We've learned it's 95% funded. Is using data from 3 years ago or new data. This is current as of 2 weeks ago or today. And then the third question that was submitted is there a document that describes the project phases that can be on our website and available to the public? So is there a current document? Okay. Great. Okay.
Please.
Well, they would like to have a document that describes the phases, describes the project kind of in brief, describes the funding.
So the handouts that
Yeah,
we have
basically
had.
our funding,
Okay.
but I think what would be, I think it seems like this describes it. But I think the only thing that isn't on here is in each phase, what is the infrastructure that's being replaced? So I think that's the only thing.
Okay,
For the pipe.
okay.
Yeah, those are the suggestion. That was a business owner. Yeah. Yeah, we have that from 2019. Be nice to have a current, yeah.
I think it's a good idea so that folks can go in there, especially the ones that weren't here. And I encourage you guys to talk to all your neighbors, other people. Let them know what you guys learned here. Let them know the approach that we're taking and let them know to continue to come, that we need support. We need ideas. We're only as strong as the people that are here, and so continue to bring all your great ideas and your concerns and your suggestions, because that's how we become a better town. And I want to close by stating that, are any more questions before I close? I want to close by stating and thanking these people here. This has been an arduous, Jill, arduous, monumentous task that has been taken on behalf of all the citizens of Tonasket. And we're doing it, and we're conscious of the people that are on a tight budget. So we could have easily have said, you know what? Let's raise some taxes, let's get this done. But because we are sensitive to the needs of our community and understand our community, we have taken this approach. It has been lengthy, it has been difficult, but it has also been, as you can see, fruitful. And it will continue to be so as we move forward. And once we end this project, and hopefully 2 years, 3 years, Kurt?
3 years.
3 years, then we'll take another one, because we have needs for the rest of our roads. We have, oh,
A little break here.
a little baby break. You guys want a break? No, I'm just getting started.
Yeah, let's catch our breath a little.
Okay. And the last thing I'll say, this week is, I think it's National Clerks, Municipal Clerks Week. And so I just want to give our clerk, who has been with this city for, and maybe we won't say that, we won't say the years, because we hope to have her for a lot longer, but I want to just give her a big round of applause. Because it really goes to talk about, continuity and just perseverance. It's not easy to be in her position, and it's not easy to be in this individual's position. Darren, my goodness, man. Thank you. This guy this morning, I'm out there. I think it was like 6:30 or I can't remember. It was pretty early, and I'm walking, and there's Darren already going up to inspect the wells. I'm like, oh, I know exactly where he's heading. Because he has to note, the well pressures and all that stuff, and making sure that all the water is as it should be for our citizens. And Darren has been doing an excellent job for us, and you guys for being here. So thank you. Kurt, Ms. Abby, and the folks online, thank you so much for all your efforts. This is exactly what we want, and you guys have been instrumental in giving us all the feedback, patient with us, because we're demanding. We're not an easy community. We're a tough community. We want the best for our citizens, and we're going to hold you accountable. Please know that. But I also appreciate that your willingness to come and face the tough questions. That is something that I respect deeply and will continue to work. And thank you for the partnership, Abby. Thank you for always being so supportive and keeping Kurt in line because he needs that. All righty. Thank you so much, folks. Any other comments before we adjourn?
We have thank yous for being on Zoom.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Any other comments before we adjourn? With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Sir, capture all that? No, just kidding.